Hello, listeners, and welcome to the Somerford Associates podcast. Today, I've invited James Richmond of Okta to discuss your challenges in the world of identity access management. If you've had headaches provisioning accounts, managing multiple directories and applications, this podcast is for you. We go into how Okta addresses these pain points, how easy it is to implement, and how Somerford and Okta can help. So let's get going. Welcome to Somerford Associates podcast, and welcome here to James, or Jimmy. What should I call you?
You can call me Jimmy. Jimmy's absolutely fine. I kind of have like a persona for work, and generally I call that Jimmy, to be honest.
Okay, so Jimmy Richmond, who is our liaison in Okta, and could you tell me about your role a bit better actually than just that?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, I am the dedicated partner solutions engineer here at Okta for all of our partners within the UK and Ireland region. And essentially, my role involves a few different things, many different things actually, in fairness, one of which is looking after all of our focus partners in the UK and Ireland, ensuring that they get the enablement they need to be able to position Okta, helping them with opportunities they may be working on that include Okta as well, but also providing any technical assistance with pretty much anything. So any questions or any help I can provide, I'm always there to try and help them provide that.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to going into this because we've spoken to Okta people before from a high level what Okta does for customers, but we thought it would be nice to get into the technical details. And you're perfect for that. So, yay. Looking forward to that. For listeners who might be dealing with loads of different challenges in their work at the moment, what kind of challenges can Okta help with, and particularly that we're going to be exploring in this podcast?
So, Okta focuses on such a vast amount of use cases and challenges that organizations face. And from my experience of working here at Okta and having been in the industry for a number of years, the use cases that we primarily come across with us being in the identity and access management are generally things such as simple tasks that generally organizations face to address first. So even just providing self-service password reset capabilities, that easy challenge to fix, or sorry, I need to reword how I say that now, that an easy solution to a problem that is so common within organizations, because just providing your end users with the ability to do a self-service password reset doesn't sound a lot, but it does have a huge impact to the organization, not just security-wise, but also time-wise, that either administrators or contractors or whoever it may be that normally would address those sort of challenges would deal with that for you. Then the other things that we concentrate on, well, we have such a vast portfolio. I mean, that's just one use case that we can talk about. The vast portfolio really does range from end to end in terms of what your organization faces in terms of challenges. So it could be for administrators creating new accounts for someone joining on day one. We can help you with that lifecycle management. We can ensure that you're providing the right access to the right users at the right time, something that a lot of organizations find a lot of frustration with. And I found that frustration myself in the past too, when I've worked in a help desk role with trying to work out what access someone actually requires. It can be really, really difficult. And when you have auditing going on and they realize, why has this person suddenly got this access? And the reason why is because someone's based the access off a job title or where someone's working in the country. It really isn't a very accurate way of doing that. So use cases such as the lifecycle management. But I mean, there's just such a vast portfolio in there for what Okta provides and the challenges it faces. Generally speaking, it's the easiest, or shall we say, the most frequent challenges that we face are the ones we always try to address first. That's why I brought up like the self-service password reset, the administration side, so ensuring that accounts are created for us correctly. But then we also cover other areas such as the security part. So if you've got applications you want to provide to your end users in a much more secure manner, we can do that. We can provide that multi-factor authentication for specific apps, or we can remove passwords altogether and have like a completely frictionless, passwordless experience for our end users.
Really?
Something which I would jump at.
So how does that? Wow. Okay. Well, we'll flag up on that later. Do you use no, biometrics is basically a password as well, isn't it? So how do they do passwordless?
So, I mean, we all hate passwords, don't we? So
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's just like the bane of our lives. Like even when you go to friends' houses or in our own lives, everybody, if you're trying to do something with them, like even having some fun, like bringing up a game or something you would do, especially because we're doing everything virtually, all this year pretty much, like there's always a password that's needed somewhere. And if you only use it like once every 6 months, everyone always has this same problem of, I have no idea what my password is. Oh, now I need to do a password reset. Oh, no, I haven't had the email. Like, it's awful, isn't it? Like that complete cycle you have to go through, and it happens so frequently too. So I always think, well, surely there's a more secure way to this, the passwords. Why is a password still around when we hate it so much? And to be honest, when it stays the same for an application, it's not that secure really, is it? So what Okta provides is the capability of going completely passwordless. So as you mentioned earlier, we can use things that are unique to us, such as biometrics. Think of it on your phone if you have an iPhone, you will use either Face ID or Touch ID or things like that. These are unique to you, fingerprint, or even looking at the way we look with the Face ID. They're far more secure than a password because someone can't imitate that unless they steal your finger. But at the end of the day, that's
you have bigger problems to deal with if someone's stolen your finger.
Exactly that. But if you can imagine, when you go into an app on your phone, I always go with the option of not using a password. I'd rather use the Face ID feature because I don't have to type anything in. Then it's quicker, it's more convenient, and it's more secure because that is unique to me. Someone can't just guess my fingerprint. They can't just guess what I look like or put a photo in front because they're far more advanced than that now. It's not just about looking at an image. It takes in like the whole scan of the face or anything like that. So we can do that with Okta. So when you go to access your applications, we can provide a completely passwordless experience from start to end with those integrations, whether it be SAML or whatever protocol it may be that you're actually doing that authentication with. So when you sign into Okta, you go into your applications, and from end to end, you wouldn't have had to type a password in because we can use things such as Okta Verify or multi-factor authentication in multiple layers there instead of using a password, which to me sounds far more convenient.
Yeah, that sounds very useful for a lot of people in a lot of companies. So Okta is all about bringing on all these cloud applications and making your identity access management seamless and very, very swish.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah. Okay.
Make your lives easier at the same time as making it far more secure too.
Yeah. And today I want to look in more at the life cycle management. Is that something that a lot of people you're talking to are asking you about as well?
Yeah, lifecycle management is incredibly popular or very common in organizations, especially it varies in terms of size of organizations, but it's very, very common, especially in organizations that you think it wouldn't necessarily be a problem when they're still doing manual creation of accounts and managing those throughout the whole lifecycle of a user. You look back and you're like, wow, that's a really painful way of doing it, being able to keep on top of someone moving into a different role or even working out the permissions they need in the application itself. But also, when you look at it, you think, if you're doing all that manual lifecycle management yourself, they probably haven't got any single sign-on there at all either. So they're having to remember all these different sets of credentials to go into these different applications. And you think of how many apps you use on a day-to-day basis. How painful would that be for you if you didn't have any single sign-on or anything there? Generally, an end user would probably create the same password for every single application they use.
Yeah.
So it's painful for them, and it's also very unsecure for the company too, because if someone gains one password, they've got access to all of them.
So lifecycle management deals with that and automates all of the joiners, movers, leavers for all your. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly that. So you can make sure that on day one, a brand new user has everything they need to do their job, and if they move into another role, that access will change, and we can apply rules. We can use groups that already exist in Active Directory or groups we've created in Okta. We can use attributes that are on a user to determine what applications they require. And we can also feed this from an HR system too. So we can do HR as a master, which allows us to have that single source of truth from a department that knows everything about that user from day one. So we can make sure that when they do their job, they've got everything they need. And it's all provisioned for them, automated completely. So as an administrator, you can sit back, you can relax, make sure and just watch everything magically happen in front of you and know that everything is correct from the rules that you set up.
And then spend more of your time sorting out bigger issues.
Exactly. Working on those big projects that you've been working on for a long time, but keep getting interrupted to do password resets or even creating accounts for end users.
Yeah. And when you hinted then it can do within application permissions, can it even go as deep as that? So
yeah. So this kind of comes on to like the lifecycle management part and advanced lifecycle management.
Okay.
So we have like two solutions at Okta essentially here. So lifecycle management is like a standard approach that you would begin with. in your journey for identity and access management. Essentially, what this allows you to do is provision those accounts inside of those applications.
Mm-hmm.
And that will then ensure that a user can have the access they require on day one. And they'll essentially just be given an application access. It'll be just general access they'll be provided. And then an administrator will probably go into the application and configure the access they need manually. So there's still manual work there with that lifecycle management for providing, for instance, if they were using Salesforce, an administrator would probably still go into Salesforce and assign the accounts that they require for their role. Or they may still go into Office 365 and assign them the file shares that they need for their job. But using the advanced lifecycle management, we can completely automate this too. And that's using workflows. So Octa Workflows is a no-code approach to having that granular-based lifecycle management, as well as having the automation and logic in there as well. So you can have that logic in there, not have to write any code, and you can have those granular activities created for you within those different applications, so such as assigning regions in Salesforce or assigning files or whatever it may be within Office 365 to a specific user without, as an administrator, having to go into those individually and doing it all manually configured.
Well, that's brilliant. The problem I can see is that advanced lifecycle management has to have, you'll have to already have set up that integration. Do you have like a bank of integrations that you have? Like, so you mentioned Office 365 and Salesforce, but there's tons of different applications. Have you got like a finite list of them somewhere?
So Okta's aim is to enable any organization to use any technology. So we have a vast catalog of application integrations available out of the box, and we call this the Okta Integration Network.
Okay.
At the moment, there's over 6,500 integrations available.
Oh, okay.
And they range in capabilities that you can integrate with your applications, whether it be, so they all support single sign-on, but there'll be some that support the lifecycle management, and they'll have their own protocols that they support. So at the end of the day, the only restriction there is if the end application actually allows the integration from other platforms such as Okta itself. But there is the capability there of creating your own integrations too. If an application doesn't have anything out of the box, a connector of some sort, if there's a SCIM capability or a SCIM connector there available for you, or SCIM interface, or if you've got an API, we can then connect into that using either workflows or even other methods within Okta, such as the lifecycle management itself, to provide you the capabilities of that lifecycle management. So if an application's in there that people generally don't use very often, there is the capability of still having that lifecycle management approach. It will just take a little bit more configuration, that's all.
Yeah. And is that so we have some engineers who are getting really quite qualified in Somerford for Okta. So there's that developer qualification. Is that what the developer qualification is about? Developing your own integrations in? So
the developer certification is more for the SIAM-based stuff in Okta. So one thing I mentioned today too is with the use cases that we mentioned earlier on today, we really were looking at workforce, the workforce identity part, which is our employees or maybe our partners working with us needing access to information within our organization. But there's also the business to consumer or business to customer use cases we also cover off too. And that's part of the SIAM piece, so the customer identity. So the customer identity is more of the developer side of things. So organizations are all becoming technology companies now. They're all developing their own solutions. They're also providing services to their customers, whether it be a web app or, if you think, for an example, a hotel, for instance. So a hotel chain will need to provide access to the information that a user stores with them, or maybe they want to provide an account to them to then make their own bookings in the future. So the customer identity part, Okta provides things in here such as the authentication or the authorization. And rather than you as a vendor or an organization developing your own authentication part, you can focus on the product itself and the service you're providing to your customers and allow Okta to provide that authentication part for you. And this is something that's used globally by organizations that range in sizes from thousands of customers to millions of customers, with some huge names there that if I could bring up a slide, I'd show you a whole list of them. But essentially, there are so many organizations in every single vertical globally that rely upon and trust Okta to provide that service for them.
I can imagine so many use cases. Even last night, I set up a repeat prescription app, which was joined with the NHS. And I bet they used Okta. I don't know actually, but I can see it was just that SIAM that you're talking about, the customer identity access management.
Exactly. That's the sort of the integrations that we provide with Okta is covering the areas that organizations don't, or the developers in that organization don't necessarily want to work on. They want to work on the product itself and spend time that they have on that part that they enjoy, rather than building authentication, which can be very, very hard to keep up with industry standards. With
yes.
Rapidly.
You take that all off them. Yeah. I mean, I used to work in a gaming development company as well. And it would be really nice to have just outsourced that whole segment of, like, especially in the gambling industry, which is very regulated. So, you know, who are you? How old are you? All that sort of thing could have just been woof.
Exactly.
Okta's responsibility. So that's where the developer qualification comes in. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It gives you that capability to be able to, it was giving you that experience and the certification to say that you've got the ability to talk about customer identity, the ability to integrate with other solutions and demonstrate how the CIAM part works for Okta. And
set it all up, I suppose, as well. Yeah. Okay, that's great. So we've got the LCM and advanced LCM, lifecycle management. I think I'm definitely sold. Even in a smaller organization, Somerford are a smaller consultancy, but you know, we even have joiners, leavers, movers, all that sort of identity. And so I can just see it scaling exponentially as you get bigger and bigger and bigger, and more complex as an organization.
Exactly, yeah. So we're built for scale. We allow you to, as an organization, if you've got hundreds of users right now, or even tens of users, we can absolutely support if you suddenly went to 1,000 or hundreds of thousands next year in terms of supporting that, because of the platform we have built around it.
So do you have like an example client who just uses Okta, like a gold standard use of Okta, so that you can describe what life is like for that client? And so if we set up Okta for our workforce and for us customers, you know, what sort of advantages can you get?
So the advantages really are immediate in terms of providing benefits, not just to your administrators, but also your end users, your employees. So as someone who joined Okta just over a year ago, actually, I immediately on day one was able to access everything I needed to do my job. And the way they provided that wasn't from me having to set up dozens of different accounts with different passwords and, you know, forgetting where they even are because there's so many links half the time. You don't even know what the application's called, and, you know, it's buried away somewhere and you're like, oh, how do I access this? And you just don't know. It's just so complex when you join organizations and there are so many apps, because there literally is an app for everything now. Instead, when I joined Okta on day one, I simply set up my account and I was immediately taken to Okta's dashboard. So the Okta dashboard for single sign-on, and all my applications were presented to me. I didn't have to remember passwords for them, so it would authenticate me in using SAML, for instance. And if it was an application that required an elevated or had like information in it, which required more security around it, then I would need to provide some sort of additional factor authentication. So I would use my biometrics or another factor that I use. So immediately the user experience that you get is just fantastic, because it's just so easy to use. And as an end user, when it's so easy to use, you don't push back on it, because if you are given something to use by an organization or at home, especially at home, if you buy something or use a service that isn't very good, generally you don't go back to it because you're like, oh, that's just painful.
You just go around it. Yeah. So
exactly. Yeah. But if you provide an experience that is really easily and frictionless to be able to access what you need to do, then you're not going to push back on it, because it's made your, as I said earlier, it's made your life easier, but it's also made things far more secure for the organization at the same time too. So, and the basis that would have been around when I joined, it would have used my title for my role. So as a solutions engineer, and by being a solutions engineer in the UK and Ireland, then it would have given me the access according to the policies that were set up for the lifecycle management. So we use our own solutions internally, and that would have done all that work for our administrators based upon all the information provided by either HR or the managers involved in that hiring process.
That's really, so there's advantages for employees, administrators and customers once it's like set up. How about setting it up? Because I guess you do need to have those policies. I mean, how long is an adoption cycle for Okta?
So I guess that really does depend on what your ambition is to integrate with. So if you've got thousands of applications, that's obviously going to take a while to get all those integrations set up. But once they're done, they're done. So with some organizations who only have, say, for instance, 20 applications to integrate with, getting these integrations set up is very easy. Although there's always going to be time required at the start to do that, return on investment and the time to value is very short to be able to do. So it's fantastic for once you've got it configured, you've got all that capability in the hands of the administrators who can then set it up. And then by investing a few hours at the very beginning, they can save hundreds of hours in the long term as well. With Okta, with all of the integrations and the applications that are available on Okta Integration Network, we also have fantastic documentation. And that's not me being biased. I honestly think the documentation is absolutely fantastic, second to none, because of its thorough overview of how to integrate it step by step. There aren't steps removed that you often find in instructions. Everything you can possibly need to do that integration, even as a user that has no experience in integrating with other applications, you would find yourself capable of setting that up.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, so actually, I suppose if someone's interested in starting Okta, come to Somerford Associates, come to Okta directly. We'll probably give our contacts later, I suppose, when we release this podcast. But the effort required, it sort of scales by the number of applications that you have. But you can also self-serve. Sounds like it's really great for self-serving as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It depends on the complexity of what you're trying to implement, especially if you're looking to have like advanced lifecycle management with the workflows for the granular activities and apps. That would be where you maybe need some assistance, not necessarily with setting up, but having the guidance and the could use it, if you know what I mean.
We have a customer who is very good at administrating Okta, but we're in to help with the really advanced workflow stuff.
Yeah, there you go.
mean, you can get really advanced, and Jamie, my colleague who does it, he's really great. He was starting to do if loops in workflows and things like that. So, in fact, actually, we have another partner called HashiCorp. And they have Terraform does infrastructure as code. And Okta, I think you probably know more details on this, can actually integrate with that as well. Is that true?
Yeah, so a solution we haven't actually mentioned today is in the infrastructure area for organizations, and that's called Advanced Server Access. So Advanced Server Access is essentially a privileged access management solution that Okta provides, and that allows you to have a single sign-on experience into your infrastructure. Also, with that zero trust strategy applied to it. So when you authenticate to be able to get access to your infrastructure, you'll use your authentication against your Okta tenant. And that will base it upon the identity of a user, what device you're using, or where you're authenticating from, potentially denying you access. Or if you are approved access, maybe it will elevate it with a further authentication step, such as MFA. Now, what Advanced Server Access works and where the Terraform part comes in is with infrastructure, we appreciate that organizations are always spinning up new servers, whether it's temporarily or permanently, and you need to be able to manage that instantly and provide access to your workforce instantly as well, because they need to go crack on with that work if it's only a temporary server to either spin up or complete a job. And the way Okta integrates with Terraform that way is, again, using workflows, but also combined with Advanced Server Access. So workflows can integrate with Terraform. Terraform can initiate that creation of infrastructure there. What workflows can also do is either initiate that creation or a job in Terraform itself, or it may even be that it's going to have a play there with maybe providing temporary access to a user to a specific server for a period of time. At the same time as integrating with Advanced Server Access, where we're going to give a user access to that specific server for that same period of time while it's only alive. So we have that complete, I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense to you?
It does, as though there's a big, so from Okta, you can use workflows to tell Terraform to set up some remote server, which can be in, AWS, anywhere really. And at the same time, set up the Advanced Server Access so you can have that controlled access to that server as well.
Yeah.
And then it goes down when the thing gets spun down as well.
Yeah, so essentially Workflows is there to provide that logic and automation for you. So we can integrate with Terraform. We can automate the creation of a particular server in our infrastructure. We can initiate that from Workflows if we wish. At the same time, Workflows can then add you to a particular project in Advanced Server Access, which will then give you access to that newly spun up server that we've created using the Terraform earlier on. And that's where it integrates with Advanced Server Access. And as a user, rather than having to remember a new set of credentials to get into that server, I can use what we already use in Okta, a single sign-on, to have that single sign-on experience into that infrastructure, again, providing that seamless experience, but also applying that zero trust strategy to ensure that I am who I say I am when I go to actually do anything on that particular server itself. And there's much more in there, such as session capture or policy sync, and the ability to control the sudoers files and the sudo entitlements too on those users. But without going into too much detail, that's where it kind of goes.
That's really, so we've covered a lot actually. We've got SIAM, workflows, LCM, advanced lifecycle management, LCM, advanced server access, integrating with Terraform. Why doesn't everyone have Okta? It's all over the place, isn't it? It really does, really will help everyone's experience when they're, just doing their day-to-day work.
Yeah, exactly. So we aim to solve all of your identity and access management challenges and use cases that you may face, as we said earlier, whether that's for your customers or whether that's for your workforce or even for your partners if you're doing that business to business use cases as well. So aiming to help you solve those challenges that we're all suddenly been thrown upon in the world here by suddenly all working from home all of a sudden as well.
Yeah, everyone doing the work from home has been a massive acceleration of this movement for people, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can just imagine, can't you? I think it was a Tuesday night, we got the news that we were going into a lockdown.
Yeah.
And just hearing from friends and family that all of a sudden the next day they'd be working from home. And I'm like, well, how do I do my job? What's a VPN? I don't even know what it is. And they were using this VPN that they've never heard of that kept breaking for them. And they're trying to access these files that are stored on on-premise server and just, I'm like, I don't know, I can't do my job. It's like breaking all the time because overnight these challenges were just suddenly thrown at an organization, and it just rapidly accelerated the adoption of like these new cloud apps that gave that collaboration. You think of yourself and all your friends and family that took up or bought a video conferencing license like Zoom or something like that. All of a sudden, that was our way of communicating rather than being in person.
Yeah, it's really transformed everything. It's been a horrible, painful pandemic, obviously, and it's still going. But it has really transformed the way we communicate and the way we do work necessarily. And Okta's just been there to help. Really, we're very grateful that we have it as well. So,
especially for that work-life balance as well, the ability to work from home, spend that extra time with your family, things like that as well. So.
No, yeah. So I think we've covered a ton of things, and there's so many benefits. Where would someone want to? Where should they go to find out more?
So, if you want to know more, then you can either talk to Somerford. Somerford will be able to give you that overview of what Okta does, the different challenges that we can address. But I'm also here to help as well with that. So if you did want to have a call or wanted to reach out, I'm happy to provide either an email for you to reach out to and ask any questions that you may have around what we've spoken about today. But of course, I'm happy to have a conversation at any time, even over a call or a Zoom, to show you what Okta actually does as well with a presentation or even with a demonstration of the solutions we've spoken about today, and show you the cool and new features that we've got coming through as well. So I'm happy to provide.
Great. Thanks, Jimmy. I'll when we promote this on LinkedIn, I'll definitely add you in so that people can reach out directly, and you can always come to Somerford Associates too. We've got webinars coming up. We've got some blogs as well. One from Jimmy as well. The future of our workplace, which it's had really good traction as well because it's talking a lot about that. The ideal state, the future of where we will work all together, and using Okta to tie it all together. So yes, lots to learn about. And thank you so much for spending the time to talk it through.
No, absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to our Somerford Associates podcast. This really was a whistle-stop tour of Okta and using it to help you with some of your other solutions like HashiCorp, Terraform. So if you want to discuss our case studies and examples of implementing it in healthcare and beyond, then please let me know on marketing@somerfordassociates.com. We also have lots of webinars coming up in somerfordassociates.com/events/Okta events, as well as the blogs we mentioned. At Somerford, we're here to help, so just let me know.